Okay, we're live on Facebook, and we've got a really important conversation that we're planning to have today. There's a lot going on in the city of Columbus and across the nation. And I want to thank you all for joining us for a special CYP Club event in collaboration with our good partners at columbusblack.com. My name is Derek Grosso, and I'm the founder of the Columbus Young Professionals Club. So as I mentioned, we're dealing with a lot of emotions, a lot of uncertainty, just a lot of everything right now. This is a difficult time. And on top of a global pandemic, an ongoing economic crisis, and growing racial disparities, everything is culminating at this moment to force us to do better. And that's what we're going to talk about today. With that, I wanted to introduce our co-moderator, Kevin Lloyd, the CEO and founder of columbusblack.com. Please welcome Kevin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Lloyd. I'm the founder and CEO of columbusblack.com. We are, for those that don't know, we are the online resource for the Black community here in Columbus. We've been around for 15 years. We're an omni-channel platform connecting our community to both commerce and to culture. Right now, obviously, the culture piece is critically important. I want to thank Derek Grosso and CYP Club for all that they do in our community, but then also coming together in partnership, because obviously, as you all can see from the title of this event, it is standing in solidarity. We've recognized that we are in the midst of some very unprecedented times, and we realized that we needed to move quickly as leaders in our community to bring a collaborative group together to have a discussion, a serious discussion and serious conversation. What I would like to share is that it's going to be a very focused conversation today around three key areas, right? One is going to be around education. The second is going to be around access. And the third is going to be around action. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to matter the most is action. There's a lot going on, and we need to figure out how to get from protest to action. And so that's what a lot of today is going to be about. So I want to thank our group and our panelists that are here with us today as well. They're going to get ready to introduce themselves, and that way you'll know who's actually here with us today. And you also have, for those that are here with us, there are a number of you that are on the Zoom channel. You have the ability to chat throughout this time with us. And then those that are live with us on Facebook, same thing. Derek and the team will be moderating the online component as well. So if you have questions, we will try to get to a Q&A section toward the end of the hour, okay? So with that being said, I'm gonna actually go to, based off who's on the screen with me, so I'm gonna go to Kay. I'm gonna let Kay, would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization and affiliation, and then we'll go from there. I think you're still on mute. You're on mute. And Kay's still on mute. Let me see. There you go, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kay Wilson. I'm Director of Community Engagement and Advancement at Impact Community Action, where our mission is to fight poverty by providing hope, inspiring help, and real opportunities for self-sufficiency. I have been doing work in nonprofit, particularly in the areas of human service and social justice for over 22 years, working with organizations like the Ford Foundation, locally here, the King Arts Complex, Tech Columbus, which is now Rev 1, and Impact Community Action. So I'm excited and proud to be here.
Awesome, welcome, Kay. We're excited to have you here as well. You bring a lot of wealth of knowledge, experience, and passion. So let's go from there, Densil. And I think you're still on mute as well. Let's give him 1 second.
All right, thank you.
There you go.
You had to get me there first. I was trying it myself, but it wouldn't let me. Thank you so much for having me here this afternoon. I really appreciate it. My name is Densil Porteous, he, him, his, and I'm serving as the chair of the Create Columbus Commission. The Create Columbus Commission is a body of 40 or so young professionals or young people who are working to advocate and empower for young people in the Columbus community. That's from 270 all the way down to broad and high. What we really believe is that it is important for young people to be a part of change and creation in the community. And so that is what we're about and what we do. I've been privileged enough to have the opportunity to work in the nonprofit space as a volunteer and as a volunteer leader for over 25 years, sitting on a number of boards. mostly looking at social service organizations, working around access and equity issues. So I'm excited to be and hopefully can share some really good input and words. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Denzel. Appreciate it. Obviously doing a lot of great things here in the community as well. Let's go to Nick Bankston.
Thanks, Kevin, and thank Derek and all those CYP Club members and CYP Club for inviting me to this conversation, hosting this important discussion. I'm Nick Bankston. I have the pleasure and honor of serving as president of the Columbus Urban League Young Professionals. We are an auxiliary group of the Columbus Urban League, which is the oldest social justice organization in the city of Columbus, where we fight poverty by empowering communities and changing lives. As the YP Auxiliary, it is our goal to raise up the next generation of young professionals in the overall Urban League movement and support the work of the Columbus Urban League. We do that through four pillars of programming. That is personal professional development, civic engagement, community service, socializing and networking. That was supposed to be a laugh time for you guys.
Yeah, I got that one, obviously. So
we are just a community of young professionals and excited to join this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Nick. And yeah, we look forward to the days of being able to party again, right? So let's move on to LoLo.
Hey there, everybody. I'm actually thankful. Thank you so much, Derek, for the invite. Thank you, Kevin, for the invite as well. I am I'm a chief marketing officer for Urban Accelerator X, which is an urban entrepreneur center here in Columbus. We are located a little bit outside of the King Lincoln district, and we really want to help a lot of the Black businesses here in Columbus be able to get access to resources, education, and a lot of the different things that they haven't been able to. Me personally, I'm an activist. This is probably why I got on this call. And I use my platform as such to provide education, spread awareness of a lot of the injustices that are going on in our community. So I'm thankful that we're able to have this conversation, that you all brought together this conversation. So I look forward to this.
Thank you very much, Lolo. I'm glad that you can make it with us as well. Let's shift from there to Caroline.
Hi, thank you, Kevin and Derek, for convening this panel. I am the Director of Leadership and Social Justice for YWCA Columbus, and it is our mission to empower women and eliminate racism and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. And since our inception, we've been working to advance equity and freedom, and we've been providing direct services to combat homelessness in our community and a lack of affordable childcare, but also within specifically my department, we work to educate the community and specifically to empower individuals, both young professional women and middle school girls, to be able to create change in their communities through activism and community organizing. On top of that, we have a big presence with trying to encourage more civic engagement, especially in this year with the census and the presidential election, and serve on a number of committees, really trying to advocate for policy reform in the community. So we are incredibly honored to be here today, grateful for this conversation, and eager for change.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you so much. We're glad that you can make it to the call as well. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap up with City Councilwoman Shayla Favor.
Good morning, everyone, or is it afternoon? I don't know. Days are running together. Everything's running together right now. I just want to say thank you to CYP for extending the invitation for me to participate. My name is Shayla Favor, and I serve as one of your council members. I chair the Housing, Public Service and Transportation, and the Criminal Justice and Judiciary Committees. And when I think about the conversation of anything around equity and eliminating racism and implicit bias, these committees are so important to really level setting and making sure we're providing the right opportunities for people of color in the city of Columbus. And so I am obviously passionate about all things that have to deal with injustice. You will see me on the front lines. You will see me being bold in my statements. Now is the time not to be shy or to be politically correct. Now is the time to fight for our people all around the world. And they are standing up, and Columbus must do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so here we go, right? So thank you all for your introductions. Now everybody understands who's actually on the line in the breadth of experiences, knowledge, and leadership that we actually have on here, people who are literally on the ground doing things in our community. So one of the things that I normally do is, whoever went last tends to go first with the big question. So Shayla, we're gonna end up coming to you first, where normally I would have you kind of come in last on this one, because I know you have a lot of great things to share about it. But the first part that we talked about, everybody, was education. Okay, so we realize that across this spectrum right now, there are people at different levels. There are people who can educate us from the beginning of time in American history, from the days of slavery and us coming here to America all the way up to today. And then there are people who are saying, I don't even know what is going on and why it's going on, and I haven't learned a lot of these things over the course of my life. So what we want to do is we want to take a little bit of time to have the panelists share from their perspective, give us a little bit of education as to what is going on and how did we get here, okay? So we know we got this pandemic situation, but we talk about this racism situation that's taking place right now in our country, and the riots that's happening, or should I say the protests and the activism that's happening, and unfortunately some of the riots. How did we actually get here? So Shayla, I'm gonna let you help to divulge some of that information, give us your perspective, and then we're gonna go from there. By the way, others, you have the ability to join in and piggyback after she starts us off.
So, this is a difficult question to tackle in an hour.
Exactly.
And I think, and I so appreciate the conversation, the question, and for my friends who have reached out to me over the past couple of days and have asked questions similar to this, and very much in the same vein of what can I do, how are you, and things of that nature. I think when we talk about education, people need to understand that Black people, African Americans, they are hurting right now. They are in pain. There is trauma that many of us experience over and over again after seeing another body on live TV killed. There is a dehumanization, almost to the point where we are just desensitized by what we're seeing on TV. And it is imperative that if you truly want to be educated, if you truly want to be an ally in this season, then it is incumbent upon you as the individual to take time to truly learn on your own. Do not just simply reach out to your Black friend and ask them what to do, but it is incumbent upon you to take time to educate yourselves. Black people have to educate themselves in order to be able to be a functioning citizen in the United States of America. There is so much information out there about Black history, about how African Americans came to be in the United States of America. And we live in a world where you can get education at the drop of a dime, literally. And so that's where we just have to take ownership and accountability for where we are and what level of activism we're truly ready to engage in if we want to see that change. And so participate in conversations like the one that CYP is having. Be willing to have those difficult conversations with your friends who are challenging you. You be the individual that leads those conversations. Challenge your family members when you hear them say things that are inappropriate. Host conversations, read books by Black authors, ask genuine questions, and really be ready to listen and not be ready to offer a rebuttal or look for sympathy from a person of color right now in order to maybe, for lack of a better word, appease whatever discomfort you may be feeling inside.
Thank you for kicking us off there. So listen, something that she said in there that I know we've had a lot of people say, hey, how can I help? What can I do? She mentioned one thing that's so simple, is reaching out to somebody just to check on them and let them know that you support them goes a very, very, very long way. Okay, so I'll state that, but who wants to jump in after that?
Kevin, I would love to. And I actually want to respond to the statement that you just made. You know, I appreciate being reached out to, and I appreciate you asking me how I'm doing, but have you done that before? Did you do that before this moment, before this time, before this period? If you weren't doing that before, I actually don't know how much I want to hear you today. Because that is the problem, right? Like, that is part of it, is that just because now it is a forefront and center of everyone, that you want to finally say, how are you doing today? I've been dealing with this for a long time. We've all been dealing with this for a long time. So ask us, how have we been dealing with this for all of our lives? Ask that question, and then seek to understand that answer when we give it to you. Seek to understand. If we're talking about education and the predicament that we're in today, it's because we stopped being educated about what was happening, what has happened from history to now, right? People thought slavery stopped and then it was all great, but you forgot about all the education in between then to remind people what has still been going on, persisting from since that moment to this moment. That lack of education and knowledge and bringing it to the forefront consistently from everyone, that's why we got here. That's why we're here now, right? People are saying, we've said these things before, we've acknowledged this before, but no one has taken action. So, right, so it is the history of what has started in slavery that has brought us to this moment in time now, because of the lack of consistent education that brings it forward to people all the time to acknowledge it. So that would be my answer. It's probably oversimplifying it to a point, but it's really getting to the heart of the matter, and that's what we have to talk about.
And Densil, I think that you hit the nail on the head, right? We got here, and we all know how we got here. Let's be honest with each other. We've had these conversations. We've seen the injustices, but we know that we feel as if that doesn't happen here, or I don't, we're past that. And that's not the case. The original sin of this country has not been addressed or healed, period. The freeing of the slaves was not the rectification for the 200 plus years of slavery. Let's be clear, let's go back even before then, that this country was stolen from Native Americans. They have not even been made correct or whole. And so this is the history of our country. That is how we got here. But to this day, and what we saw and what we see in the streets, we got there because folks are tired. They're tired of the lip service. They're tired of us having conversations about it. They're tired of us bringing studies up about it. They're tired of having to defend why it is that we have to have equity in our policies. So that's how we got here. And I think when it comes to the education point, you're correct. I know it's been a long time, because in high school, we always looked at Black history and it was just for February. But we have to look at our education system and say, why are we not teaching the full history, not just glossing over it? And we romanticize Dr. King, we romanticize the civil rights era as if it was this joyous time in America. It was not. It was not. And the pain of that, we still see it today. We think about the Civil Rights Act. That is what's given me the ability to sit here today. We have to educate ourselves on that. That act has to still be renewed by Congress. These are the issues that we are facing in our country. And it's not enough to just be ignorant of it anymore and to say, oh, I didn't know that happened. Well, go back and look when we do tell you, or when your friends do say, and don't stop and just look and fact check that one check. Dig deeper into the lynchings that happened. Dig deeper into the men whose testicles were cut off and put in jars as trophies. And although this is not an indignation of the current generation, we live in a society where current white folks benefit from the systems that were put in place. So you have a responsibility to look into those systems and figure out how we can change them.
Seek to understand, right? That's the language business people use. Seek to understand. You want to understand the root of what's going on. Sorry, I had to jump in there again.
No, that's fine. We call it root cause, right? So what's the root cause? Digging in deep, as he says, seek to understand what's the root cause as to why this is happening. But then it's the action that takes place, which we're going to get to that shortly. So anybody else want to share perspective before we move on to the next one? Go ahead, Kay.
So I just want to add, we talk about education. You can look at mappingpoliceviolence.com. And so I participated in a project from 2013 to about 2017, where it talked about 28 police killings in Columbus, Ohio. And of those 28, 21 were African-American males. And so we need to look and pay attention and educate ourselves to what we're doing locally. If I think about why we're here because a lot of us, that's African-Americans and that's those who are not African-American, have been uncomfortable, but we have not felt responsible for taking care of the African-American community. And I say that because those of us who are older have a responsibility to bring those up who are younger to succeed, right? To put them in positions, whether it's positions of power, whether it's positions, running organizations. And we have been uncomfortable, right? And now being uncomfortable is not enough. We're calling people to be responsible and accountable. And so looking at the community, my grandfather used to tell me, and they grew up on Jefferson Avenue, my grandfather would tell me, I asked him, Grandpa, why did you move from the South, right? Sometimes we think because we're in the Midwest that it's not really our problem. And so he used to tell me, well, the difference between the North and the South is in the South, they will let Black people they don't care if you get too big, or excuse me, they don't mind if you get too close. They just don't want you to get too big. Here in Columbus, they don't mind if you get too big. They just don't want you to get too close. In Columbus, we were asleep when we had an African-American mayor, an African-American police chief, an African-American fire chief, African-Americans that were head of some of our top Fortune 500 companies that were here locally. We were asleep. We got comfortable. And so why we're here is because people who were uncomfortable are now wanting to be responsible and make people responsible for where we are today.
And I wanted to add real quick one other thing. Well, just two things. I think that we've gotten to experience COVID. So COVID kind of laid out the foundation. And I will say that a lot of people who were not Black were very outraged at the way that the government stepped in and took control. And this is just a small view of our everyday lives as Black people, of how we feel oppressed. People felt oppressed because of the fact that they couldn't go outside, because the government said you can't leave your home. Imagine the people who are supposed to protect you, you being fearful if they pull you over. It's still that underlying, this is something that we were born into. I posted something about this yesterday. Everyone is outraged. People are feeling pain. Imagine being born into that. And that pain running through generations and generations and generations of your family. And we get labeled as angry. We get labeled as aggressive. And this is just a small piece of history for us. And so I will say my last point with the education piece, yes, please educate yourself, our allies, even people who are Black. But also don't take it personal. I see a lot of people who are not Black, who are taking this personal, who all lives matter, police matter. I'm not saying that they don't. Don't take it personal when you're looking at this information. It's going to be hard to look at to see what some of your ancestors have done to our people. But it's because we have to look at the ugly truth so that we can make change in the future. And that means everybody. That means white people, Black people, everyone has to take a look at this. So.
Thank you, Lolo. If I could piggyback off of that. So, we know that mainstream history is written and distorted by those who are in power to serve their own interests, right? And so, for many of us, we've been fed this false whitewashed narrative of the American way. And so for people who are thinking, well, this isn't my America, you've gotten to know the wrong America. America has a sustained tradition of state-sanctioned violence to silence Black Americans and to promote white supremacy. And when you're thinking about education, especially, we know that when we're talking about history and the way that it's told to us, and specifically connecting that to policing, we know that mainstream police tactics still feel the origins of slave patrols. And when we're thinking about the idea of this kind of police reform, the historical influence of slave patrols where sheriffs controlled Black people as property and capital and not protected as humans, you know, our nation's investment in protecting Black lives pales in comparison to the resources and urgency exerted to protect that capital, right? So there's an activist who I'm sure many of you have heard of, but if you haven't, please look her up. Brittany Packnett Cunningham explains that, you know, this happens not just because they don't care, but because the use and destruction of Black lives have been central to creating that capital. So when we're thinking about demands for police reform, they're met with arguments about the financial costs being too high, yet we continue to pay for the increased cost of policing. And when demands for change are met with patronizing calls for patience, we see that our leadership can act swiftly and does when calling in the National Guard and when responding to a pandemic. So indicating that the speed in which change occurs directly correlates with the jurisdiction's priorities. And so what we have seen is that unfortunately, Black safety and freedom is not the priority.
And Kevin, if I could just throw this in there, just for one tip for folks to look at. We just celebrated it yesterday. It was the 99-year anniversary of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. So if you want to look at something or just to look up something, look that up. And the destruction that came at the hands of our government pales into comparison of what we see on our streets today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen,
Can I say something? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. That's why you're here. Go ahead.
I'm appreciative that Nick brought that up. If anyone is familiar with The Watchmen, it's an old series, but HBO just recently redid it. And in the beginning of the Watchmen series, they alluded to the Tulsa Massacre. And that brought so much controversy, if you're not familiar, because a lot of people did not know that that incident even happened in America's history. But how dare you mess with my interpretation of what The Watchmen was really about? It was really based in some racist ideologies, right? Now it gets romanticized as it goes on, but the reality is that we must challenge things in this country. And when you hear someone cry out and say, this is not right, this is what it is, understand that how much blood has been shed in order to keep the veil over everyone's eyes so that we can protect the American dream. And understand that everyone's American dream has not been what has been portrayed on TV, that it has been a bloody, war-driven, riot-driven mess. But on the other side, there has been freedom, there has been release, there has been ways that have been made. But understand that it takes time to get there. It takes these uncomfortable conversations. We're ready to have them. I want everyone to be able to be ready to have them as well. So sorry to interrupt there, Kevin.
No, I think it was very appropriate. I think everything that you all have shared thus far has been extremely appropriate. One of the things that, I've been in a couple of different meetings over the last few days, and the thing is, you have to hear everybody out, right? We have a lot of information, we have different perspectives, and the one thing I wanted to do was have each of you share your perspective. So thank you for getting us through that component. By the way, there was a link that was just shared that Derek will get out of the Zoom chat. So those that are on Zoom, you'll see that link in regards to Black Wall Street, right? The Massacre of Tulsa's Black Wall Street. I think to wrap up this education section and to move on for time is there's a lot of information and education out there. For those that don't know a lot of the Black history that's a part of American history, it is American history that unfortunately has been erased from the American books, right? So from our books, so we didn't learn a lot of this stuff. So unless you research it, you won't understand all that we have done, but then all that we've been through as well. So I'll invite you to do some of that. There's links being shared left and right now. So we're gonna move on to the next phase of this discussion, which is resources, right? Or access, should I say. In the access piece, we're gonna look at that a couple of different ways, right? There are a lot of resources in our community. There are organizations, leadership organizations have been working for years to help us from an injustice standpoint or from an equality perspective, and they are still working hard. But right now, there's a need for a community effort. Black, white, yellow, green, I don't care what you look like. Good people need to fight this side of the battle so we can win. But with that being said, the resources we have here, I want you all to share some of the organizations and our resources that people can get involved with, right? So we're going to take this is going to almost be our segue into action. But if people want to either find out about organizations that exist that are doing things to help support this movement, which ones are they? Which ones are you affiliated with that we should know about? And I'm asking people to take notes, pull up the links. We'll try to jot all that down as well and have it on the Facebook page as well as the Zoom page also. But anybody want to kick us off? Organizations out there that's giving us the support that's needed, because this is going to turn into how other people can get involved. Let's see. Yep.
I thought Nick was going to kick it off for sure.
I thought so too. I'm looking at Nick and I'm waiting for him to say something.
So I guess I'm on the spot now. I mean, really, honestly, you're looking at some great organizations that are sitting right here in front of you, right? And I think that you kicked it off and you said resources, Kevin, but that is what's needed to propel this movement forward, right? There are organizations that are on the front line that struggle for resources. We had just conducted a study at the Columbus Urban League, and they're great partners and we love our United Way, but we noticed that even across the country that Black nonprofits and Black organizations, specifically social justice organizations, receive far less in funding for the work that they do. So there's organizations that you can get involved with if you're looking to either donate or volunteer, but there's countless ones in Columbus. You know, I serve on the board of the Columbus Urban League. I serve on the board of St. Stephen's Community House, the Reeve Avenue Center. Caroline is here with the YWCA and their work to combat racism. Densil and the work that he's doing. There's the, I mean, the list can go on, NAACP and the work that they do as well. And I think that and I think this really speaks to the beauty of the African-American community, is because there are many different ways that all of us operate, but we're all marching towards the same goal. And so I would encourage you to look at those different organizations, Impact as well, that's on the call. What's their mission? What ties to you and what can you get involved with? I think that this is not a call to say, I'm here as the white savior and I'm going to do everything. No, that's not what we're asking. But what we are asking is for folks to open their eyes and take the one small part that they can add to it. So those are just a couple of organizations. There's also national organizations that those are tied to as well. So for instance, the Columbus Urban League is an affiliate of the National Urban League movement. There's the National Action Network. There are tons of different organizations that you can get involved with, either directly or indirectly by supporting with your resources.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. So he line listed a number of organizations, right? And once again, all those links are being dropped in. Thank you so much, Derek. But he's literally given us the resources. What I want to do is versus somebody, does anybody have any other organizations that they want to share? But I want a few minutes to go toward the access component, but I'll lead us into that. Any other organizations we may have missed?
I'm ready for this access component.
Okay. All right. So here's where we're going to lead, and not for too long because we're going to run out of time because we got to put a lot into the action piece. Is one of the major components or major opportunities, and we've all heard the numbers, right? Especially when it comes to financial support from a VC perspective. We've heard the percentages. When you look at, the dollars invested into Black-owned businesses and founders and things like that. But broader than even that, one of the opportunities or challenges that we've had is the access, and Nick kind of alluded to it, the access to funding or to the right relationships, right? And a lot of that is systemic and institutional. And I think a lot of people that are not Black, right, or brown don't understand that that is a major barrier, right? When the people who are making the decisions, the people that are at the table, making the decisions at the table, because sometimes we're at the table, but we're still not a part of the decision, is that when it comes to the financial side of things, these organizations that are being listed right now need financial support. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and act like, hey, we don't need, yes, they need financial support. If you compare them, like he said, nonprofit organizations that are Black ran, right, or Black nonprofit organizations, versus white nonprofit organizations, you're going to see a significant difference in the dollars that are available for them to do what they need to do. Even if you look at the salaries, a significant difference. So the access is a critical part. And what I'll do is I'll lead here. We were on a call the other day. One of our white counterparts was on a call to try to say, what can I do to help? I want to help. I want to get involved, right? And when we started having a conversation about access to certain people to have the right discussions to make sure the decisions that need to be made and the changes that need to be made, the light bulb went off because that person has access, okay? So as we get into action points in a few minutes, you got to realize that this is where those that can help and want to help, a lot of it is going to be as simple as picking up the phone and saying, I am a part of this change and I want to make this happen and you can do it. It's that simple for many of you. We can't pick up that phone in a lot of cases, but we need you to do that. Anybody want to chime in on that?
I think I learned a long time ago, the same thing, sitting at the table, maybe not being heard or listened to, but I was at the table. And I realized that in order for access to happen for people behind me, beside me, was that I had to keep sitting at that table, right? And still finding ways to develop those relationships with the folks who are at the table. Because it was important for me to be able to then say when my community needed me or called me to get access, that I could give them access to those people. So I think that's one thing that you as hopefully accomplices and not just allies, right, understand that when someone is sitting at the table and they ask you to connect them to something else, then you do. You just open the door, you open your arms and you say, here you go. I'm uplifting you and uplifting this moment for whatever it is that you need because I believe in you, right? Because you've been sitting at this table with me and I trust you. And if you don't trust the person that you've been sitting at the table with, then there's a problem with you. Right? Because if you're sitting at the table with someone, then you have to believe that they're fighting for the same things that you are, regardless of what organization you're at. So you start from that place of commonality, right? And then if difference comes up, then you figure that out. But, right, access is I'm sitting at the table with you, and if I come to you, my accomplice, and I ask you to help me get something or to open a door to someone else, you just say yes, right? That's what it is. That's why I keep showing up in these spaces. That's why I keep dealing with the injustices that are thrust upon me, so that one day you can look and say, wow, this person is actually there working just as hard as I am, so they should get the same access. There should be no question. There should be no moment of pause when it comes. And so that's why I continue to sit at the tables that I do, so that when my friends come and ask me for access, I know that I've been fighting hard to get it. So when they want it, I can give it to them.
Outstanding.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, to that point about the access and resources for those organizations, I think a key part of it, especially particularly organizations whose missions are surrounded by African Americans, is that there has to be culturally competent programming and resources that are given. There are a lot of resources, either whether it be the government and those kinds of things that are out there that are either very cumbersome, it's very hard to navigate, especially for those, or they don't even speak to our audience. So that's why it's critical that these institutions that we raise are around, because they communicate directly to the African American community. And again, it's culturally competent and digestible in a way that provides them opportunity.
Yeah. And I wanted to piggyback off of what you both said. I'm going to be completely frank, because I'm glad that we have this platform where there are a lot of our allies and we can have this real conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm calling on each one of you because, and one thing that I said, I don't know who I was talking to from CYP, but one thing I said to them when they told me what their short-term action plan was during this time, because I challenged them to have a short-term, a mid-term, and a long-term action plan as an ally. How are you all going to show up? And they were like, we're going to have a conversation. And I said, that is not enough. That's the honest truth. And so I want to challenge every ally who is on this call. It is not enough to have the conversation. You all have to show up on our behalf. If you really truly want to make a difference, you have to show up on our behalf and not do it when it's convenient for you. When Black lives are a topic. Today, I have literally been calling out all of the organizations and all of the businesses that are on High Street that literally take our money every weekend, all week, and have been silenced. And I'm not asking you to be inauthentic. I'm asking you to stand up because you have a place. I see so many beautiful white faces on this call. I need you all to represent us in your rooms, in your spaces, in your positions, and not do it just when it's popular. Not do it just when Black Lives Matter is a movement. This is the first step, but there has to be consistent change. It's not enough for me to just be at the table. I'm always gonna represent Black people. I'm always gonna go hard for Black people. That's just what I do. But I need the white person next to me to go hard too. I need the white person next to me to rally for us to have resources and access. And the last thing I'll say is, I'm gonna call out, for example, Rev 1. I need Rev 1 to stand up. I need Rev 1 to continue to play a role in this economy by fueling Black businesses. I mean, I was like, I'm gonna use this platform so that we can really have these tough conversations.
So so LoLo, right? So we get it, right? And we know that there's a litany of organizations that we can do that with. And I think Kay raised her hand real quick. We have literally 2 minutes and we're going into action. Kay, do you have something?
So I do. It's very simple. I had a friend who works for Lextent, which is a great company for user design and translation, Justine. And you can do what you are, where you are, with the gifts that God gave you. Just start there. That's what you can do. Make a personal mission statement. What do you want your breath to be worth on this earth? What is your breath worth? Okay, because I know what mine is worth, but if you have a personal mission statement that says that you believe in equity for all, then that means you're going to live that every day. That means if you see, a young Black child that, might not have, in this situation of COVID, didn't have a tablet or didn't have something, you're going to be able to provide that for them just because. It's not a post, it's not, for any recognition. It's just because. I feel terrible whenever you get a craving for Skittles or a bottle of iced tea, thinking about Trayvon Martin. I want you, every time you breathe, I want the name George Floyd, I want it to mean something to you. I just want you to be okay with the space that you're in, understanding that nobody is there to take it from you, but we all deserve this space to belong, all of us.
And Kay, you just said something that was really powerful. This access piece is not about, and I think this movement is not about taking something from white people or having something in exchange. We're trying to make a stand to say, what kind of America do we want to bring our children up in? And that if our rights and our lives matter, then that is a better society, even for your children and when they're growing up. So this isn't about, we want to take something from you in exchange or place of. No, what we're calling for is that equal opportunity and a fair opportunity to have the same things that we all share, right? And I say we all because let's be clear here. Some of us that are on this call who are African American, we share in some bit of privilege. Now, it is not white privilege. Let's be clear, but we all have a role to play in this. And that's a society that we want for our kids, not just an economically strong one, not just a socially just one, but one where everyone has the opportunity. Not, again, that we're just handed something because of the color of my skin. I don't want you to hand me something because I'm brown. I want you to give it to me because I'm the best. And that's what's been missing.
Well said, well said. All right, so I think that's a great segue into action, right? So what I want to do is here, we're going to take about 10 minutes, right? Because then we're going to go in and wrap up. In regards to action, so now what, right? So what do we do, right? So I'm going to open it up to see from our panelists, if you had to say here's 1, 2, and 3 things that everybody on this call can do starting today, how they can get involved. What is the answer for now? We know we got to have a short term and a long term, but right now people want to do something, get involved, and there are needs out there as well. I want to hear from our panelists. Do you have any guidance, direction as we try to identify these action steps?
So I can speak to that, and I want to come back to the specific action steps that you call out. I will say though that, so I personally am not here to talk about my own opinions or feelings because this is not about me. And I would rather give that time to my brothers and sisters of color on this panel to talk about their feelings. But I will use this time to talk to my fellow Ohioans, specifically the white majority, about allyship and a call to action around that. I know many of you are feeling upset about the state of our country and yet feeling paralyzed and not knowing how to respond. We should all be outraged about the systems of marginalization and state-sanctioned terroristic violence that have perpetuated centuries of these racial inequities and the loss of Black lives. But our outrage without direct action is the same as complacency, and we must demand action. So when we're thinking about avoiding conversations because they're uncomfortable, we have to stop doing that. It is uncomfortable for mothers to bury their sons because of police bias and brutality. It is uncomfortable for a family to bury their mother because she's died in childbirth, and knowing that the United States has the highest rates of mother mortality than any other developed nation. We cannot continue to prioritize our own comfort over the lives of Black Americans. And right now, I think that it is crucial that we come together and build a community of allies to fight against systemic racism, and we need you to dig into the work with us. And I think when I'm talking about allyship amongst social movements, yesterday was the beginning of Pride Month. And as a queer woman myself, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the very reasons that I am allowed to be married to my wife today is because of the courage of protesters going on during the Stonewall riots. Through centuries of resistance and protest, Black Americans have been and continue to be foundational to the idea of freedom and common good in America. The struggle for Black rights influenced social movements throughout our country, from women's rights, immigrant rights, to LGBTQ plus movements, and these calls to advance human rights have largely been supported by Black Americans. So the uprising at Stonewall and the subsequent rebellion was started by Black and brown transgender women and drag queens. I would not be able to safely walk down the street hand in hand with the person that I love without fear of imprisonment if it would have not been for them. And so it is past time for us to stand up for equity and stand up for structural racism and police brutality. Our Black and brown brothers and sisters deserve to live a life free of fear and persecution, and we all have to do our part. And so in thinking about action steps, I know I don't want to take too much of my time, but a couple of things we can do: advocate to your employers to take a stand against racism and implement policies internally to combat bias. For those of you who don't know where to start with that, Rachel Cargill has a great template that you can customize for your employer. So as far as enacting systemic change within your network, that's one way. We can donate and fundraise online for organizations like Columbus Freedom Fund, Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, YWCA Columbus. But most importantly, I think one of the things we can do is to vote, and to vote in every election. Especially right now, it is incredibly imperative that we organize, that we tell our friends, that we make sure we're registered to vote, that we advocate for early voting and for mail-in voting. And we don't just show up in presidential elections, but we show up in local elections and state elections so that we are able to have a representative democracy that represents the people's voices and needs, and that are willing to be responsive to our demands. And so we at the YWCA Columbus is putting a big push to help voters to register and to fight against voter suppression.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because we may potentially run out of time, I want to go to Nick and then Shayla, just in case. So Nick, would you go ahead first?
Sure. I think one, Caroline, thank you, because you said a whole bunch of things, and that's really helpful. One of the things that we just did on Sunday, we had a press conference, and we were calling for all professionals and young professionals to call out of work, and to say that we were going to relinquish our production power until our corporate CEOs and corporations understand they have a role to play in that. And I want to say, and I want to give the framework for that, because it's not about police brutality. Police are pawns in a larger system that is broken. These CEOs and the companies that we work for, the companies that we shop at more often, which are way more than small business, they have a role to play. They have politicians that they give money to. They stand up, they use their lobbying power when they want to see less taxes. They use their lobbying power when it's something that benefits them. They use their lobbying power to make sure that they control wealth. They can pick up the phone, and wherever Minnesota is, I'm sure there's a Fortune 500 company there that has the governor and has the AG in their back pockets, who can pick up the phone and say, arrest these officers or I'm not giving you any more money. And you as an employee can demand that, because here's the thing: when we think about Citizens United, it says that corporations can now function as people. And so if they want to have a voice in our politics, then they also have to have a voice in our societal change as well. And so if they don't want to have a voice in politics, then they need to shut up and then take their money out of our system. But until then, understand this, that you work for that corporation. So when they do stand up for things, they're speaking for you and on your behalf. So you have the ability to do that. So the course of action is when you're sitting in the room and we're putting together the new project and you look around and say, where's the Black folks at, right? Or if there's a subcommittee being formed on social determinants of health, and you get to the room and it's a bunch of folks that don't live in the neighborhoods that we're talking about, ask, where's the person from Linden? If we're focusing on that particular neighborhood. So really the call to action for all of us is just to be more cognizant. I think sometimes we are unconsciously ignorant and we walk around as if that's okay. No, we're not racist. We just have relationships with these people. That's why there's no Black people in the room. No, you have to be conscious. And the reason why is because everything we see around our country was based off of conscious policies and procedures that were put into place. So until we say we're going to have an equity agenda and says we're going to consciously say, this is what African Americans get. This is what Latino folks get. Because there were policies that said you can't live here. There were policies that said we're not giving you money. There were policies where the federal government gave out free homes called the GI Bill to folks that fought in the war, but Black folks didn't get those. So these are conscious things that people put into our system that is eroding to this day. So until we consciously attack it, it will never get done. If we think that someone else is going to do it, or if we think that the VP, that's their responsibility, no, it is your responsibility. You have a voice. Now listen, you can be as radical or as unradical as you want. I ain't telling you to go send an email to your boss and get fired. So don't say the CYP told me to tell you I quit. But the bigger
keeping it real. Go ahead, Nick. Keeping it real.
But the bigger point is you have to start somewhere. And like Lolo said, that conversation is just the beginning point. But we have to push and push and push until we get to a place where we don't even think about it because we're already in the room and we're already working together. And I'll kick it over to my council member.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you, Nick. You really laid the foundation. So the first point I want to make is that you have to be ready to evaluate your own beliefs, be ready to challenge them. I've been seeing and hearing a lot lately about my white colleagues and friends really starting to understand what white privilege really means. It was a buzzword for the past couple of years and maybe almost like a mythical idea that Black people made up to make white people feel bad. But it absolutely exists. I was at the protests on Saturday and there was a moment when things really heated up on High Street. And there was a young white female who yelled at white allies who were standing on the sidelines with signs, but not willing to get in front of the Black students and young folks who were up really almost face to face with officers during that contentious moment. And she challenged them, put your body on the line. She understood that an officer could maybe think twice before putting hands on a white female than putting hands on me, right? And I did get, hit with the spray over the weekend. I'm not asking you to put your life on the line or to do anything like that. But what I am saying is that it's going to take a bit of bravery. It's going to take some courage to do what's going to need to be done in order for us to see the progress we want to see. But understand that throughout history, that is what African Americans have done. The Women's Suffrage March, there were women's organizations, Black women's organizations who didn't even have the right to vote, but they marched alongside white women because white women wanted the right to vote. Women wanted the right to vote, but Black women helped to lead that charge. And then we had the right for women to vote, right? When you talk about Stonewall, that movement really was compelled by Black women who wanted to stand up and say, it's not right We need to have equality all around. And so for my white colleagues on this call today, be ready to confront some of those old ideas that you've had that have perhaps jaded you to the point where you weren't able to receive that information, and understand that now that it's been presented to you, when you know better, you do better. And the last thing I'll say is that I believe Densil mentioned having a seat at the table. Understand that we all have a table, whether it's a boardroom table or it's a nonprofit table or it's an internship table. We all have access to some type of table. It is incumbent upon you as the person at that table to look at the table and to see, is there a person of color here? Is there someone from the LGBTQ community? Do we have religious diversity, right? This is a conversation that extends so far beyond just Blacks, right? That when you have a voice, a different voice at the table, change is made. Thoughts are new conversations are had, new laws are made, but it doesn't happen if you do not have diversity, real diversity at the table. Understand that this problem is minorities can't fix it on their own, right? We don't have the power to be able to fix this on our own. We need you to step up and be willing to fight this fight with us. And moreover, it's really not minorities, it should not be the responsibility of minorities to fix a problem that they did not create in the first place. And so that's where we can truly start to see some change, when our ideas, our own personal ideas and beliefs begin to change.
And we're
Can
fighting.
I just say ditto? Well, go ahead, somebody else jump in.
And be clear, it is a systemic racist system that we are fighting, but it's also a culture in our community. We have to fix both. And I am not a woman, but I think we all know this. Birthing is a painful process. And right now we are birthing something new. So the process is going to be painful. But what comes out of that birthing process is beautiful life. And I am 100% convinced that if we work together through this birthing process, that we will birth something new, not only for Columbus, but for our country and for the generations to come. So this is a tough conversation. I want to thank you guys for having it, but it's much needed. It's much needed, and we need you. We need everyone. Everyone has a role to play.
Outstanding, outstanding. So while we get ready to go on to the rest of our panelists, I do recognize that Nick has an important function he needs to be at, and I believe Shayla may as well. As you all know, as leaders in our communities, especially working with the city of Columbus, they are very, very engaged and active right now. So we appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us for this very important conversation. We'll be inviting you back to another one.
Can I just say once, I just want to thank CYP for this conversation and for every young professional that took time out of their day to listen. You can learn so much just by listening, not having a rebuttal, not ready to say, you know, you're wrong because of this. This is a great start. And like LoLo said, you know, it's not enough, but it's a great start, right? And so from the bottom of my heart, I truly want to thank CYP and every person that took time to just hear a different perspective today.
Awesome. For those that want to clap, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, lots of claps out there. Love that. All right. Yeah, kudos. And we'll see doing the wrap up. We'll thank Derek and CYP Club again for this platform. So on that note, Nick, anything before you go? I know you're going. Yep, he's gone. All right. So as we continue to wrap up the actions, because I don't know about y'all, but I have a list. So it's not going to be anything people have to worry about. What do I do now? So anyone else want to add?
I would like to go ahead and really quick say some actions because I too have to go to the same meeting. So they did really, really great. First, I just want to say thank you so much. As far as actions, things that we can actually do today. First, I would say just be open-minded. Everyone be open-minded, even me, myself. There are times like I don't always agree with the methods for change. Like, but I have to be open-minded to just because that's not the method that I may choose. I still have to be empathetic. You know, we still have the same goal. I have to get there. So just being open-minded. I will say that everybody represents a space on here. Like Shayla said before she got off, we all sit at different tables within different businesses. We all occupy different types of culture here in Columbus. And so there is something that you can do in your space at all times. If you are an exec at a corporation, you can make your voice known by having a conversation, by figuring out, working with people, not only with Black issues and at this time, but working with your teams to figure out, are we being ignorant? And not by choice, like, are we unintentionally being ignorant? Are we unintentionally leaving people out? You know, are we unintentionally doing something to continue on these historic issues of injustice? And how do we change? It's not just about just leaving it at the conversation. What are some things that we can incorporate into our corporations? What's some things that we can incorporate into our friendships? And I will take that point and also say, have a conversation with your friends. Check your friends when they're doing some reckless stuff. Check your friends when they're saying some of off the wall things. You'll be very surprised how many people that I have seen who have made some very interesting comments on their social media, but continue to be in the face of Black people. So checking your friends. And then the last thing I will say is we have to really address the economics issue when it comes to the Black community. And there is a huge disparity in so many aspects when it comes to economics. Like for the fact that our dollar only gets circulated like in the Black community for 6 hours. Wow, that is completely low compared to the Asian community, compared to the white community. And so what I will challenge everybody, if there's one thing that you take away, let's collectively make a stand for the next week, starting tomorrow, that we will intentionally support a Black business. We will intentionally buy from a Black business. And I know that seems like, what does that have to do with social justice issues? It has to do so much. Because by fueling money into our economy, by fueling money into our businesses, we're able to continue to strengthen our power, continue to strengthen our voice, continue to support policy changes by putting money behind it. But we have to have access to these things. And that will be a start. That's not the end all. That's not going to be the answer. There is no immediate answer to solving the issue that has taken place for years and years and years. But that is one thing. So that's my takeaway. That's what I'm leaving you all with. That is my challenge. One full week, tag that business, show your support. One full week of shopping Black. And I thank you guys. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you so much, Kevin. This was great. I'm so appreciative of these spaces. Let's have more conversations, and then let's put an action behind it.
Absolutely, absolutely. LoLo, thank you so much for your contributions, all that you're already doing in the community, and for your input on the call today. All right, very much appreciated. So I know you're going to have to leave shortly as well. So why don't we go to either Caroline K or Densil?
I appreciate, as much as everyone else has said, this opportunity to be here this afternoon and talk with everyone. I think the action that I always push a little further than allyship is accomplice. I need you to be my Thelma and Louise. I need you to be the Thelma to my Louise, or Louise to my Thelma, however you want to look at it. Accomplice means that it's not you coming to me and saying, Densil, how do you want to fix the problem? I need you to come with some really, really radical ideas of how we can fix the problem. Come to me and say, Densil, I've been thinking, I have a thought. Accomplice means you go just a little bit further than allyship, because you're going to be there thinking about these same things that I am all the time, day in, day out, right? When I wake up in the morning, I think about being Black and what that means, right? So as an accomplice, you're going to be waking up in the morning and thinking about what it means for my Black friend, what it means for my friend of color. I think about that as I walk out the door, as I engage with people in the office spaces. I think accomplice means you are thinking about it all the time in every action that you do, so that you can be intentional and hold yourself accountable. So I think that's how I end it. I think I'm looking for each of you to be accomplices in this fight. We need protest and politics. And so be accomplice in the protest, be accomplice in the politics of it. We've got to combat this on both sides. And I believe that we can do that. And this conversation, I think if nothing more, allows us the opportunity to at least give space and opportunity for the conversation to happen, and for others to be able to sit back and take it in, to receive the message, and then think about what that means for themselves moving forward. And it is Pride Month, as Caroline mentioned, and I am a proud out LGBTQ Black man. And I think in the duality of that, the intersectionality of myself also brings its own issues and challenges to sitting in a role that says we all can and be and do and should be doing better. And I am so thankful for all of those who've come before me to give me the space and opportunity to do what I can do with little privilege that I have. And I dedicate, this month and my life in particular to continue to lift up the voices of the spaces that I don't have. So I will continue to fight for LGBTQ community, but I will also be continuing to fight for the Black community because that is essential. So I thank you again. It was a great conversation, and hopefully everyone will now become accomplices in this fight. So thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you, Denzel. We appreciate you being here as well. So Kay?
Thank you. So what I will say, and I'm going to give a brief context. So as you see me here, clearly I'm an African-American. I am very thankful, Derek, for the opportunity, continually knowing you. I think it's probably been about 12 years doing an ad at the King Arts Complex, right? When a lot of people weren't doing ads for the King Arts Complex. So thank you for your heart and your tenacity. But I say that because you see me here as an African-American woman, but I was adopted by a white family. And so I've seen this, and I want, all of the allies, all of the accomplices, if you could take a breath, right? I lived in a house for years with a woman who adopted me who, could not understand my Blackness. She thought that it was something that I could take off like a coat. And she also thought that because she adopted me, that meant that she had no issues of racism or prejudice. And I've watched this, I've lived this. So I want you to take a breath. But I also want you to understand that, what we make of this city, what we make of this place, we're all in this. We started off of protest. This country was founded off of protest. And that means a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? If you look at a report I just saw yesterday, in Europe, in the UK, it is now whites are the minority majority, all right? So we are, as a entire, universe, we are browning and we are graying. That is what we know. That is what the numbers are. But I want you to take a breath, and I want you to think about the space that you're in. And, what do I want you to leave with? I want you, everything that everybody said, where you can, do what you can with what you have right now for someone that is African-American. I want you to say in the spaces where you are, again, where are the African-Americans? We've seen a lot of companies who've had a lot of blunders because they didn't have the right people at the table. We need everybody's voice, and I need you to be my voice right now. That's the thing. We need you to be our voice, because there are a lot of comments, if we see things in the news, where you need to say, hey, that's not right. This is not who we are. That might be who that person is, but this is not who we are. And then I want you to educate yourself. We talked about police violence. We have a presidential election that's coming up. We also have a Franklin County prosecutor election that's coming up. Pay attention, educate yourself. It's not my job to tell you how to vote, but I'm going to say pay attention, and pay attention to what they've done in the past. Our current prosecutor has been there for a lot of years, which means a lot of years is a lot of years where if it was ingrained in you, you could have had an opportunity to get it right. And then get involved. Get involved, because a lot of us have a lot of great programs. We have a lot of great ideas, but social service organizations, nonprofit organizations, you can have all the great programs in the world, but you don't have very much marketing money to tell people about it. So whether it's the Y, whether it's Columbus Urban League, whether it's Impact Community Action, all the variety of organizations that are out there, understand and look for that information. Don't wait for the information to come to you. So just be better at looking for the information. And again, make a personal mission statement. What do you want your breath to be worth here? All right. And just thank you so much again for taking time. Derek, thank you so much. Kevin, thank you so much for being always artistic, articulate, and wonderful. I appreciate you so much.
Appreciate you as well. And thank you for sharing so much. All right. Yep. I see some hand claps, right? So, all right. So Caroline, you're going to wrap us up, and then Derek and I are going to take us out.
Sounds great. I think that to continue echoing what my fellow panelists have said, taking our stand against racism, coming out as an anti-racist ally publicly, showing what actions you're willing to commit with the world, and then invite others to come along with you. So not just posting something, go beyond that and into true activism. And I think that one of the things that's important with that is that if you're not sure where to start, the 1619 project is a really great place to start as far as learning history. Angela Davis's book on women, race, and class. Look at, if you are someone who's an administrator or you work in the government, if you are someone who has a position of power. I put this in the chat earlier, but there is an organization called GARE. It's the Government Alliance for Race and Equity. They have fabulous resources about applying a racial equity framework into all layers of your decision-making process, whether you work within government or a for-profit business or a nonprofit. Think about the impact that your programs and your policies and your protocol are having on communities of color, and then actively work to support them as opposed to oppress. I would be remiss if I didn't have another call out again to voting in every election. Be aware that you have to first request a ballot application and then submit a ballot if you are voting by mail. So please make sure to allow yourself the time to do that, and fill out your census. That is also incredibly important for our community. It helps to determine political representation and the distribution of federal funding into our communities for the next 10 years. So making sure that we have the representation and resources that our communities deserve is incredibly important, along with all of the additional advocacy and activism work that we should all be responsible for doing.
Outstanding, outstanding. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and we're about to wrap up. So Derek, did you want to share anything now, or you want to do it at the end?
Just wanted to thanks everybody for coming, and note that and LoLo was totally right to put us to task, take us to task on that. The CYP Club organization has been around for almost 15 years now, and we've done a lot for the community, but we can and we want to do more. And so this conversation is the start. It's a continuation of some of the things that we've done, but again, we need to do better. And so that's as an organization that has the largest network of young professionals across the country, that has a lot of people looking at us, we want to be an agent of change and a force for good. So that is what we're going to do. You're going to see much more action. You're going to see much more advocacy. You're also going to see a lot of more voices. And that's one of the things that I love about you, Kevin, is, one of the many things is that you and I think very similarly in that bringing people together and collaborating and bringing together the minds and the talents and the tools is something that can really make things happen and make them happen quickly. So that's what I've got to say. But I wanted to leave you, if you don't mind, the last word.
Yeah, no problem at all. I appreciate that. So listen, the first thing that I'm going to start with, so I don't forget this, because I know everybody's still on a little bit longer, is that we appreciate each of you for joining us today, and we appreciate your time. The second thing is I once again want to thank Derek. He's been an amazing partner, not just for me, but for so many in the community, and especially in the African-American community, right? So it was mentioned earlier with the King Arts Complex, and Kay said it, but Derek, when we started ColumbusBlack.com 15 years ago, he did an article on us and interviewed us and highlighted and spotlighted us at the beginning of our time. So for us to be back here 15 years later It shows you the power and the value of relationship, especially when you don't let color get in the way, right? So thank you so much, Derek, for all that you do in our community. You do a lot, and a lot of people don't understand the magnitude of what you do to really impact each of our lives. So thanks again to you, CYP Club and CYP Cares, all right?
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he's sincere, right? So, and I have to defend him too, right? Because yes, LoLo reached out, which she didn't know at the time, she was right for doing it, to challenge him like every other organization, is that he was already here as an accomplice. He was already in the passenger seat with me riding down the highway saying, let's go do this. So I appreciate that. And I want to make sure everybody understands that transparently. So one thing that I want to make sure, there's a couple of things that were said. There was a lot of organizations shared. Derek did an awesome job of capturing all of these links on the Zoom chat. Those will also be shared on the Facebook chat as well, this thread. One thing I always talk about with these settings is this is a digital footprint now. The first thing that each of you should do is that if you received anything positive from this, please share it. That's the first and the easiest thing that you can do. It's a digital footprint, is to share it. That's the first thing. The next one is I was working with an organization here. Many of you are familiar. It's called Can't Stop Columbus, right? Can't Stop Columbus was founded due to the pandemic that we were going through. And basically you have all these organizers within our community that took a leadership role to say, we are going to fight this thing. We're going to help each other. We're going to support each other and bring all of our skills to the table to do that. And while I haven't been as involved as I would like to be with that movement, I have been in the loop, and I did reach out to them in regards to what we're doing. There's a young lady who was working on a website, is whodouserve.org. I wanted to plug that because a lot of us have dealt with what we've seen, right, in regards to the police abuse and what's been going on. That platform is designed to capture that. And as we all know, Mayor Ginther provided a website, an email address yesterday. So if anyone has had a bad experience, to share that, because we do need to document these things so that they can be addressed appropriately. Documentation is key, as we all know. Now, I'm going to go into a component of the action piece, right? So that everybody understands. There's no way, and we're going to recap this, this will be in the thread as well. There's no way anybody walks away and says, I don't know what to do. So one, I have allyship and accomplice, right? Must demand action. So be an accomplice, get in that car and let's roll together. But you have to demand action. Two, I have conversations with family members and friends, right? Reprioritize the way you look at things today. Have those conversations. They need to be healthy, like this one today, a healthy conversation. What we're dealing with is real. Three, advocate for systemic change, right? We have to advocate. I talk about that word all the time, and I don't care what race you are. Advocate for people that are doing great things. Just vouch for them, okay? Next is raise funds. We need, look, dollars are needed. When we get it, everybody needs help. But obviously, when it comes to the Black community, there's a need there. Help to raise funds for these organizations. There's plenty of them. Get aligned and figure out which one you may want to support, or leverage somebody you have access to that have the capital to support if you can. Then you have vote, all elections, every level, right? Local, state, and federal. Challenge corporations and CEOs. Where do you stand and what are you doing? We've heard from a lot of companies and corporations, right? They've said, hey, we're behind this movement. What do you mean by that? Okay? It's one thing to say it. What are you doing? How are you behind it, right? Let's not let them get away with sugarcoating it, saying, hey, we stand strong, so that, guess what? Nobody does anything to them. What are you doing? What have you documented, and how are you helping this movement? Not, by the way, not just a Black movement. I'm not just talking about that. We have an issue as a society. What is your organization and company doing to help fix it? Okay. Next, we have be cognizant. That's that whole piece that ties into being conscious. And this is, we learned this with 9/11, right? A pivotal time. We learned this, say something and do something, right? If you see something, it would say something. In this case, if you say something, do something, okay? Do something about it. Don't just talk about it, be about it. Next is challenge your beliefs. Understand what white privilege means, right? At this point, if you don't understand it, I would just say, look at the videos that are online and you can clearly, distinctly see what it means, right? We understand that a lot of people don't agree with it, but it is the reality and we see that, right? So just being aware that it does exist and what it really means. Courage, something has to be put on the line. And now everybody plays a different role. Everybody's not going to go down to Broad and High and protest. We get that. But certain people are going to be in an office space are going to be able to call up Governor DeWine, right, and say, this is what we need to do for our state. People on this call right now, you have access. You literally can make that call today and say, hey, I know we just had dinner 2 weeks ago, and this is an issue. What are we going to do about it? How can I help? I was on this call, and I heard exactly what we need to do. And I want to make sure you hear this too, okay? And then from there, we go to fight this, right? Fight this and fight with us. We can't win alone. It's going to take all of us to make this happen. Be open-minded. You got to be open-minded. Otherwise, guess what? You close everything out. Everyone occupies a different space. We just talked about that. What can you do in your space? You play your role where you're comfortable, but make sure you are not a part of the unintentional problem. Don't be a part of it, right? Have some intentionality. Ask that question. Do we have the right people at the table? And then it says, check your friends. Check your friends and family members when they make comments that are wrong. And you know they're wrong. Guess what? That's part of that pain process, right? We struggle with conflict. We all do naturally, right? It's hard to challenge somebody and say, you know, that was wrong what you just said, because they've been saying it for 20 years and you've heard them say it for 20 years. Now is the time for you to have that little bit of courage to say, I don't agree with that, okay? And stand firm on it. They're standing firm, you stand firm, okay? Next is economic disparities. We know that they're there. Help where you can help. Fair wages. We know, think about this. We know that, and I see a lot of females on this call. There's no reason why a white male should make a certain amount of money, and then a white female should make a percentage of that, and a black female should make a percentage of that, and then a black male should make an even lower percentage of that. That makes no sense in 2020 for the same work, right? We have the ability to challenge that. A lot of us in the HR help make the decision and change, okay? We've had enough. Intentional, okay, here we go. Intentionally support a black business. I'm gonna help you all with this one. This is the easiest thing in the world. Derek put the link in for COAC, right? There's a litany of black-owned businesses. If you wanna support, there's no more excuses, right? You can go through and say, guess what? I need a florist. I need somebody to do this. I need lawn service. I need this. You can utilize a black-owned business, no excuses. Now, what we do at columbusblack.com, we send out an email directory of black-owned businesses every week. So how do you help us? Go to columbusblack.com on the right-hand side. You're gonna see where you can subscribe. Just join our email list, it's free. But what's gonna happen is you're gonna get an email with all of these black-owned businesses every week, and you can support them or you can share that with somebody else. It's right in your inbox. There's no excuses. That's a part of what we do. And by the way, they pay for that. If you support them, they get to keep paying and they get to be a client. And guess what? We recycle that. Easy, okay? We're the African Americans. So when you're in those meetings, who's at the table? Be our voice. We need you to be that voice and advocate. Educate yourself and pay attention. Get involved. So you got the links. So now what? I need everybody to say from this list, I'm going to do at least one of these things. There's no more excuses. There's ways for you to do that. Here's the big one. A lot of people say, I'm not a racist. It's not about not being a racist, being anti-racist. Racism is killing our country. You won't believe how many times I have said, imagine how far along we would be as a nation if we didn't have racism. Think about that. The power and what we could do if we didn't have this wall in between our collective thoughts, expertise, knowledge, commitment, and dedication to accomplish amazing things if we didn't have those barriers. It's deep. The 1619 Project was given as a resource. And then the last piece that I have for you all, it said, take a deep breath, right? Take a deep breath. Everybody right now needs to take a deep breath. I'm gonna share this last piece with you. I'm working with a task force. We decided to come together as a community-based organization. We have now titled that organization. What I'll say is, if anyone wants to be involved in this collective effort, okay, right, of all people, and Derek is a part of this, okay? info@columbusblack.com, just email me, tag Derek, ping him if you have access to any of his channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, same thing for columbusblack.com. Hit us any way you need to through any of those channels and say, I want to be a part of Breathe. That is the name of the task force, is Breathe. Why? Because we've all heard it said, I can't breathe. It's time for us to breathe. And what each letter of this acronym stands for, and I'm gonna break this down, is it stands for breath, racism, eradicate, abuse, trauma, healing, and endure. And when you read that out, it says, take a deep breath as we destroy racism and eradicate the police abuse and societal trauma in order to heal as a nation for what we have endured for way too long. Breathe. And on that note, thank you all for joining us today. I appreciate it. Y'all have a blessed one. Please stay safe. Remember to spread the word, support, and share some love. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Derek, CYP Club. This is what we do. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody.